Phyllis Lambert was crucial for a new approach to the historic fabric of the city in North America, in a certain way, in a parallel way to what was happening in Europe and especially in Italy with the centri storici rethinking and the case of Bologna a few years later. She initiated a photographic mission in Montreal, the so-called Greystone Project, in which, together with the young British photographer Richard Pear, she photographed the historical building of the city. But more than that, she founded Héritage Montréal, which is an association devoted to the preservation of the historical fabric of Montreal. This association saved a lot of buildings from demolition, preserving the urban structure of the city, its character, and also historical value. Gaia Aulenti was part of an intellectual discussion around architecture that emerged in the 60s and 70s around the magazine Casabella with Ernesto Rogers. But she really played a very important role, especially in the field of the profession and in the practice of architecture, even if she took part to this discussion and this debate. We have to keep in mind that in that period, the women architects were very often relegated to the field of design and the field of interior design and perhaps the private residence commissions. By the way, Gaia Aulenti, we can remember some of her design work, like the Lampada Pipistrello or the Table on Wheels or the two Olivetti showrooms in Paris and Buenos Aires that were incredibly interesting. But she was able to gain large commission, escaping a kind of segregated field that very often women architects were confined. And some of these large-scale projects, for example, like the museographic project for Gare d'Orsay first and then the Beaubourg later, or perhaps the transformation of the National Museum in Barcelona, the Istituto Italiano di Cultura in Tokyo, or the transformation of Piazzale Cadorna in Milan. But an aspect that I think is very important in her practice, and for me perhaps one of the most relevant, is the work she did for the theater, working for more than 20 years with Luca Ronconi, and giving up all the traditional approach to scenography. She was able to think of the stage design as the construction of space through an architectural project. The relationship of Phyllis Lambert with Mies was incredibly strong and influenced her a lot. She went to study architecture after the working with Mies at the Seagram. But for example, she started to study architecture at Yale and then she moved to Chicago to IIT just to be nearer to the teaching of Mies. But clearly, Phyllis was able to move to another kind of experience and to move farther from this modernist position as we spoke before about the experience on the preservation of the historical city or the creation of the CCA. They really marked a total different cultural climate than the one of the modern architecture. And Guy clearly was part of this moment of the rethinking of the modern experience and the idea to start to operate in a very different way and in a very different context. I think it is impressive what they were able to achieve in that political and social context so marked by gender inequalities. Phyllis Lambert was the only woman involved in the Seagram building project, for example, and she has plenty of memories of conflicts with inside that kind of project, inside the management, with the family. I think it was not very easy for her as a woman to overcome all these kind of obstacles that she faced. But also Gaia Aulenti, even if it was some decades after, it was not easy for, what I know, for her to navigate a project like Orsay. Again, she faced a lot of problems because of her gender position in respect to the existing situation in the organization of the big project of Orsay. At a personal level, I have to say that both Phyllis and Guy, they married, they divorced, Guy had a child, but the problem of motherhood, I think, is a huge general problem, speaking, for example, of Guy and of Italy, which is very present today too, marked as it is by social and gender inequalities, and especially by a lack of any proper welfare. I feel that the issues of recognition and of redistribution that mark that period are still at the center of our society today, and it is very difficult to think that this kind of situation has changed so much as we would have expected yet. So it is really, these two issues are really at the core of unsolved problem or unsolved issues at the center of our contemporary society. The discussion on architecture, the public discussion on architecture with Huxtable, but also on the city with Lambert, but think of Scott Brown or Jane Jacobs, they were really producing an incredible contribution and advancement of the discussion. But at the end, I think that the contribution of Phyllis Lambert in creating a new institution devoted to architecture, and based on this premise that architecture is, and let me add, has to be a public concern, was really unique. And what I can say, I do not see any other example of such a kind of person that was able to create this kind of institution, and at that level in the 20th century, but also today too. And perhaps we are missing that a lot.